Hey schizos. I wanted to ask you something that I'm sure has been asked 100 times before. What's the scariest experience you've ever had? Something spooky that's happened to you and that you still remember to this day. I'll start off by telling a very tame experience. I live in an apartment, on the highest floor. I have a window in front of my desk, facing the next building's rooftop. One night, I saw a human figure standing straight ahead, on the rooftop, looking directly at me. Somewhat startled, I was trying to figure out what a guy was doing at 2 a.m., on a Monday night, standing on the rooftop of a building, staring at me. Maybe 10 seconds went by, and poof. It just disappeared. Maybe it was just a guy smoking a late-night cig, and he just hid, embarrassed. But then again, he just vanished. Anyway, scariest shit I've ever seen, pick somewhat related. How about you, /x/? No bullshit, well, maybe a little bullshit, but only if entertaining. Be me. 19. Happened around 4 months ago. Sitting in the living room playing a video game. Look at the clock. 1 a.m. Shit, I got time for one more game before bed. Get pissed off at people playing Rainbow Six. Rage quit. Look at clock. 4 a.m. Shitpants.jpg. I'm probably just a retard. Go to sleep. Wake up later that day. Weird rash/mark on hand. What the shit? Wait for weird things to happen. A couple of small indiscrepancies occur. See shadows in field behind house from time to time. Concerned.avi. In 2017, MIBS kidnapped me from McDonald's and interviewed me for 2 hours at some place near the airport. It was about a UFO I saw and posted about on /x/. They made me repeat it was a plane, probably an Airbus, at least 50 times during the interview, then another 20 times before I could leave. Be a child. Won't go to bed for some reason. Parents leave me in the living room out of frustration. Spooky shadows lingering in bedroom all night long that I can see from the living room. Girlfriend keeps hearing voices. Same house, different room. Get seance shit and start recording with hi-fi digital devices. GF hears a specific phrase that showed up on electronic recordings. Visual in some background layer on FL Studio's spectralizer and barely audible. Matched perfectly up with what my girlfriend heard and responded to our questions. Later on, same room. Playing Vidya all night. Spooky home alone at dead time, 3 a.m. Scream comes from right next to me and circles around to the other ear. Frozen solid in fear with goosebumps. Just have to play it cool. No one in the house but me. Around 2 a.m. Go to shop for a beer and cigs. Leaves next to a big cemetery, so always my route. In front of one of the gates, at the middle of the street, there's a guy standing. Didn't expect nobody, but okay, I'm a big guy. As I get close, he's just standing there, shaking his head like he had Parkinson. WTF, but okay, go anyway. Didn't acknowledge me. He never looked away from the cemetery, or moved an inch. Just standing there shaking his head weirdly. Probably a junkie or something, but man, that was weird. He wasn't there when I came back, like 10 minutes later. I had an episode of sleep paralysis. Only 7 years later would I find out it was something much, much more sinister. Around 2010 I had several episodes of sleep paralysis. One terrified me so much, I will never ever forget it. I was lying in my bed and woke up. Couldn't move and I had this feeling of primordial dread I have never ever felt before. I heard the stairs creaking and knew something was coming for me and was almost shitting myself in fear. I saw a long-fingered slender hand slowly push open my door. It had really long nails. I short-circuited in fear and actually woke up. The episodes came and went and stopped after a few months. Most were weird by nothing as absolutely terrifying as the one I described. Fast forward about 7 years. My life was in the shitter. I was a 27-year-old slacker, still studying a degree that takes 3 years. My mom was depressed and unemployed since about early 2011. She got into debt and put under custody by a lawyer to pay back debts. We got evicted for not paying rent and ended up in social housing. In December of 2017 my mom started acting weird. She started throwing up a lot and slept many hours a day. But I was too busy smoking weed and stuck in my own little downward spiral. One day she started looking yellow. Her skin, her eyes. I told her to go to a doctor but she refused. The next morning she looked really bad and called an ambulance. They examined her in the hospital. Turns out she had late-stage breast cancer. It spread to her bones and liver. She died the next morning. Turns out, the day we moved into social housing, in July of 2017, she found a knob on her breast. She knew it was cancer and deliberately did nothing. I guess it was the final straw. She let it run its course. You could say she killed herself with cancer. Enter my dad. They were long divorced. My dad was always a kind of spiritual guy, and helped us out after mom died at our social home. Take care of the funeral, clean house, stuff like that. Just so we wouldn't be alone. A few days after my mom died I get a phone call from my dad. He was in an absolute panic begging me to get out of the house. My dad is a very calm and collected person. I've never heard him like this. It freaked me the hell out. He was frantic. It was for reasons he couldn't explain right now. I said okay and stayed with friends for a couple of days until after the funeral. After that, he sat me down and explained everything to me. Now, I'm not into spiritual mumbo-jumbo, by any means, and was already bracing for a heap of nonsense. He knew this medium/water healer lady that he contacted after being at our house in the days after mom died. While I was away one day and he stayed to clean up, the kitchen door leading up to the stairs opened suddenly. There was no draft, and that door had never done that. Dad said he felt a weird presence and looked up the stairwell. He swears he saw a shadowy figure stand at the top in the darkness. So he contacted this water healer lady who apparently was a very special person, according to him, that was born with a gift that let her see and feel energy, even from a distance. My dad explained it to her and she did some spiritual digging at my place, so to say. She told my dad it was very bad and that everyone should leave the house until it was cleansed. My dad told me, he had a dream the day my mother died, of my mother laid to bare in a living room of sorts with a white/black square pattern on the floor. And there were entities swarming around her, grey, nasty looking, with long slender hands and fangs. Now, my dad had never been to our new home before, and I had never sent pictures. This was strange, because our living room exactly had that floor pattern. He couldn't have known this that day. Enter Healing Lattice explanation. She explains there are bad entities, which form a parasitic bond with people. It feeds on misery. But not these entities. They make you sick, make you suffer mentally and physically till you die. Which is out of the ordinary, since most entities can't feed of you when you die. But these don't give a shit and kill you eventually, and find new victims. Healing Lady asked if she may contact me for further details. I agreed. She asked me if my mother ever visited a big domain with a castle. My town has exactly one like that, as a matter of fact. From the Middle Ages. I said yeah, there is a fair there each year and my mother visited it every few years. She then explained to me that domains like that used to have a torture well. Basically, they threw your ass in there and let you rot, while still alive. That domain had one, according to her. She said that people who die a violent, painful death that according to them is unjust can't move on and turn into these messed up entities that dwell this earth and latch on to people, perpetuating suffering. So according to her, my mom got one of these things to latch onto her. She also asked if my mother was with friends the days she visited that fair. I remembered that one time she went with her best friend. Her best friend, who as of 2016 died of breast cancer. I was perplexed and honestly was like, yeah, I'm sure okay, thanks I guess. I didn't pay it much mind. But then things started falling into place, the more I thought about it. She visited that fair with her best friend in 2010. And I looked into it, and yes, the domain used to have a torture well almost smack in the middle of the fairgrounds. I started having these sleep paralysis episodes in 2010. That one night I experienced such fear that I never, ever experienced before. The long, slender grayish hand that slowly opened my door. The same my father described in his dream the night my mother died. My mother lost the lust for life starting then. She became depressed. Gave up her job. She didn't work from early 2011 and onwards. Depended on state gigs from then on. Apparently I was to be the next target, after they had quite literally consumed my mother. Water Lady cleansed me, by treating me with water she blessed. It took almost 3 hours. And no, she didn't charge a penny. She said she had only encountered this once so far. That was in early 2018. Since then I graduated, have a steady job, stopped smoking weed, bought a house, got a girlfriend and have a kid on the way. All this in 2 years' time. So yeah, I'm thinking I dodged some messed up shit. My mother didn't. Make of this what you will. I want to add, this cleansing ritual was something special too. She filled a big plastic tub of water, while I was standing in the bath with my swimming trunks on. The water was hot too. And after about an hour of continually throwing water over me and making me rub myself with it, something strange happened. I get really cold and started shaking like a leaf. At the same time massive amounts of steam/water vapor rose from all over my body. The temperature didn't change in the room, the water had been the same temperature all along too. Absolutely mind-boggling. And as I looked down, the water that gathered in at my feet had a yellowish hue. I just can't explain it. I really believe this lady was legit. She told me I was their next target and they had already been preparing me by making an entry in my aura at my lower right back. This completely flummoxed me because I distinctly remember experiencing a very, very sharp pain at that precise location a month before my mother died. I hadn't mentioned this to anyone before. I honestly believed I had gotten a hernia, but the pain subsided after 2 days. Be me. 16 years old, snuck out to smoke weed with friends. Friend and I waiting by the church since we waiting for our third friend sneak out. 1 a.m., sitting in front of church with friend. Friend says, "You'll look over there, is that him?" I look up and just see girl holding a thick book, long hair, can't see her face but was wearing a dress. Simply strolls right on front of us, passing us, and goes towards back of church. Friend and I get spooked and try to see where she went after she passed us. Walk over to the side of the church, she's gone. Never talk about this again. Still don't understand what I saw to this day. The figure made no contact with us and it seemed like she just vanished. Made no sense why somebody would be outside at 1 a.m. with a big book and a dress with no pockets by a church. Pic sorta related as her dress looked a lot older. Feeling like I've seen beyond the veil is the most terrifying experience I could have. I had 2 incidents within 2 days that shattered my sense of reality. LOL. I was on a trip out of state, staying with a girl that I've known online for most of my life but never met. I was there all month, and these 2 incidents happened in the last couple days before I left for home. We smoked and drank a little one night, which isn't anything I'm not used to. We were having a good night, just vibing to music and stuff, and were starting to get a little sexual like we'd been a few times during the trip. Then this weird sense of conscious anxiety came over me, like there was something else inhabiting my mental head space. Then slowly and steadily it grew into this feeling like there was some kind of heavy presence in either the room that I just didn't have the sense to see, or right on the other side of the physical world, as lame as that sounds. The feeling felt like it was centered in the girl I was with. Like there was some kind of sucking vacuum feeling coming from her that was tugging on my thoughts. Like this weird, very physical but entirely mental feeling, what I'd refer to as soul sucking if that didn't sound so stupid. It got strong enough to the point where it felt like there was a mental black hole right in front of me coming from her, and I had to straight up get out of bed and get a few feet away as I felt like I was getting pulled into something. It terrified me in a way that I really hadn't felt since I was a real little kid, afraid of something that I couldn't comprehend. I noped out and gave some anxiety attack excuse, then split out of the apartment to go for a walk, just to get away. I felt better the further away I got, even though I felt like that black hole feeling was still following me. Walked like an hour or so before it eventually stopped. I'll continue if anybody's interested. Oops, I fell asleep. Definitely wasn't just some social anxiety kick. It wasn't the first time we were getting sexual on the trip. This was at the end of a month-long stay. The second big freak out, for lack of better term, was the next day after the first one. I felt the same sort of soul-sucking void come over me, and it was just while I was playing a game while girl watched. I tried to just write it off as a bad feeling, but like the time before it just started to grow. It felt almost like there was some kind of big heat source just a few feet from me, even though it was all inside me. It felt like heat but mentally, if that makes any sense. I had this gnawing feeling of helplessness and futility, like I was losing a fight or something. And it got to the point where things started to swirl. Not swirl like, just got all dizzy, but legitimately swirl like a clockwise spiral. My continual visual snow I have was slowly twisting and rotating in a clockwise spiral pattern, and my sense of balance was off and I felt like I was rotating in the same direction. I got up, kind of made the same weak excuse about an anxiety attack, and basically just left for another multi-hour walk. As soon as I got a little distance away from the girl I was staying with, things started to clear zero up, but majority of the people I ran into on the walk felt the same as she did. Like there was some kind of strong pull on my consciousness from them, and as if lingering too long or letting them strike up too long of a conversation was letting that black hole feeling grow again. I distinctly remember a conversation I had with some guy outside a church I was walking past. He was speaking absolute nonsense. He out of nowhere started giving me directions to some place that made no sense. Down a river bank, walking under the highway till I reached the Colorado River, taking a right past a tool shed. I was in Oklahoma. This guy making this nonsense and legitimately mind-numbing conversation wasn't some drunkard or homeless guy either. He seemed to me like some kind of ex-cop or firefighter or something, and he claimed to be a preacher at the church. Why I remember this so vividly was that it wasn't until I'd been listening and just nodding along to these weird directions for a few minutes that I realized it was just utter and total nonsense, and that the whole time I'd been standing there this feeling of some consuming black hole had just been silently growing close to me again. As soon as I realized, I left right away and just kept walking. Weird detail, I guess, but that whole run-in with the church guy has really stuck with me. It legitimately felt like he was just trying to lure me in with some distraction and slow me down from getting that black hole feeling out of me. If that makes any sense. After that, all of it kind of just calmed down and things went normal again. I made my way back to the apartment I was staying at, and things were kinda usual again. I left the next morning. I've not really had any incidents of that intensity since, but I've definitely had a lot of constant small stuff going on and have continued to feel like whatever that was has just been kind of lurking and waiting till I'm vulnerable again. Sorry if this whole couple posts don't make a lot of sense. There's so much just unexplainable feeling and thought that I experienced, and I'm also tired and trying to avoid sounding like some kind of crackpot. Be me. 7 to 8 years old. Have this aunt who tends to take me with her to do shopping and stuff around the town. She is well known in town and people often invite her to their houses. She is also known for being into magic and weird stuff. Mom once told me she found a voodoo doll when she and my aunt used to share the same bedroom. One Sunday, we go visit one of her friends. Old house, 2 floors, rustic, lots of trees in the property. We go inside. 3 p.m. Plenty of light outside, but for some reason the house is very dark inside, no lights on. We go to the 2nd floor. Aunt greets friend, old lady, and they start talking. Notice 2 kids sitting in a couch watching TV. Can only see their backs. Aunt goes with friend to one of the rooms as they continue talking. I just stand there watching the 2 kids and the TV. Suddenly, the kids stand up and start staring at me. There is this sort of green slime coming out of their mouths. They start chewing the green slime in a weird way as they keep staring directly at me. There is green slime all around their mouths and jaws, even some dropping into the floor. Don't know how to react, but I know I'm terrified. Run downstairs in fear. Wait there alone for around 20 minutes until I hear my aunt coming. We walk off the house. Never mentioned a word to anyone, didn't ask my aunt about the place or the people. 25 now. Still get the chills when I remember this. To this day I don't know what that was, but it was pretty frigging scary. The kids looked very weird and I still cannot explain what was that green slime coming out of their mouths. On July 24, 2010 we were over at one of my cousin's house for my brother's birthday, and I for whatever reason looked out the sliding door to the backyard, and I shit you not, I seen a flying ice cream van / ambulance with a shit ton of different red and white blinking lights scattered around the exterior. The flying van was about 100 feet high, more or less. I started screaming, "Flying car! Flying car!" But my least credible cousin was the only one to notice me, and as he looked it was already almost gone, flew directly above overhead, and all he said was, "Ooh, that did look like a flying car." This is one of the most unbelievable / outlandish things I have ever seen. I'll share with you a small piece of my soul. It's the most frightening experience of my life because it caused me to feel unsafe and question reality. Me 23. Coming to terms with superstitions and the fact that I've been brainwashed most of my life. Psycho-religious parents. Previously had believed spirits were listening to my thoughts. Was losing my mind slowly until one night I have a light bulb moment that it really is just all in my head. Decide to think all kinds of dark stuff because nobody's listening. Go to sleep watching some dark movie. Wake up and finish said movie around 5:30 a.m. Hear object move. Think to myself that it's just a critter. Hear it again. So I put on my glasses and watch a leftover shish kebab stick push itself long ways off my table. Think it's weird but unexplainable. So I pick it up and put it back. 2 seconds later it does it again. Nothing else influencing it. Terrified.jpg. I bolt out of the room and never sleep the same again. And it's been 5 more years. I really haven't managed to let go of what I saw. Just a small object moving on its own. I've tried explaining it in several ways. Too many details to go over. Maybe a force that doesn't affect light plastic, or maybe an actual bug I couldn't see, but what bug isn't afraid of a human? Maybe it's just something I'll never know. But it 100% was the most terrifying event of my life. Honestly, I'm probably just nuts. But there you go. I work at a drive-thru, and this one time, this disgusting, fat, obese, grotesque bitch, who smelled like shit and piss, paid in cash, and she wrapped her fat, distended sausage-fingered hand around mine. I was never a germaphobe or anything like that, obsessive-compulsive or whatever, but afterwards it felt like I had an oily sheen on my hand, and whenever I think about it, it feels like things are crawling on my hands and I need to scrub it off. Like my hands feel filthy and I'm disgusted to the point that it sends shivers down my spine. Be me. See red laser shining in my eye. Hear drug dealer's voice. Run through woods trying to catch phantoms. Gets told it's the tree people talking to me. Spend a month in the woods. Come home and see blood pouring down all the walls and hear scratches on the ceiling. Levitate mid-air on bed while sleeping. This is completely true, and I'm hoping just a drug-induced hallucination. Be in college, living in apartment with 2 roommates. Abandoned mental hospital just about a mile away from campus through the woods. Decide to get drunk and go poke around inside of it at night with my friend. We had talked about spooky stuff a lot as an interest. Neither of us took it very seriously, but both thought it would be cool to see something. So we slam like 5 beers and throw some in a backpack and walk to it. Have to admit it's very spooky looking outside. But we find a hole, rummage around, just a lot of old shit, smells like we are definitely damaging our lungs being inside. Decide to leave and climb out. I really have no idea, prob 'cause we were drunk, but we split up, maybe disagreement over way back, no clue. He walks back to campus. I decide in my drunkenness that it's way too cold to walk all the way. I actually feel like I could get hypothermia or something. I break into a gardening shed at a building just across the street from the hospital. Curl up and sleep there. Wake up on like 4 or 5 a.m. in total discomfort and just walk back, pretty eventless. This was very strange and stupid behavior on my part. I was dumb back then, but this struck me at the time as very strange, especially given the context. This next part is probably totally unrelated, but their proximity in my head have been totally linked for years now. It's a few days or weeks later, I have decided to drink and take Ambient that I got from my roommate, and stay awake, because I heard it got you messed up, and again I was really dumb. Didn't realize it actually is a really effed drug. Do not do it. Makes me hallucinate. At first it was kind of funny. I was sitting in my room drinking a beer and see Larry Bird spinning a basketball jacket standing there. My time is all distorted because I believe I'm fading in and out of consciousness by this point. Now in the corner of the room by my window is an extremely beautiful girl. I look over like, oh nice, but still weird. I'm pretty sure she's not actually there. I look away. Suddenly I am absolutely overcome with dread. There is now a heavy atmosphere of impending doom in the room. I know it's coming from the woman I just looked at. I can see peripherally that she has changed in appearance in an absolutely horrifying way. I cannot look at her, no matter what. Somehow I know this instantly. I think I tell whatever it is to leave my room without ever looking back in that corner. I totally black out from here. My other roommate tells me I was at the kitchen sink turning the water on and walking away. Did it a few times where he would turn it up, finally told me to stop. He described the way I looked at him then as extremely malevolent and still makes me feel eerie to this day. He hid the knives. Wake up with no recollection. Really don't know what to make of it all, but as I said, probably just the Ambient. Be me. 2 weeks ago. Go to bed after being on a call with a friend. Wake up. See that Discord called my friend at 2:01. MFW, it was right next to my head. Next day. About to go to bed. Hear knocking coming from the eaves of my house, shortly followed by scream. Sit there frozen for a second. It gets louder. BTFO. I've had many paranormal experiences in this house and they've been getting worse and worse. I was in the woods at night, because I thought I am badass, and not scared of shit. The place where I walked by first looked creepy and stuff, but it also had a deep fascination to me, don't even know why. Somehow I just wanted to go deeper into the tree line, and probably prove to myself that there is nothing to be afraid of. I was in there for almost 20 minutes, and the reason why I was in there so long is because I found a clearing in the forest and it kinda looked nice in the moonlight, and I decided to stay there for a while and enjoy the view. I was about to leave and I almost arrived to the street, as I heard this messed up sound. That shit was really loud, and it must had been at least 5 meters close to me. It scared the shit out of me cause at this moment I did not know it was a fox or a cat bangin'. All I thought of was demons or witches or shit like this. I did not run away, cause I ain't no bitch, but I could not bring myself to turn back around where the sound came from. I just walked a little bit faster back on the road. Be kid. Live in kind of old crickety and cold house. Get food and leave for my room on the 2nd floor. Close the door and walk to my desk when I suddenly notice one of my closet doors is slightly open. I am on the other side of the hinge so I can look inside. Instinctively remember that I did not leave it like that and suddenly feel fear. Closet door starts to slowly open while I stand right behind it watching. At first get a cold rush down my back before trying to scream but not being able to. Just stand there as the closet opens further and further. Then all of a sudden I saw that it was just my cat casually walking out of it. Not that scary in hindsight, but I have never felt paralyzing fear like that before. There's a few, but they're mostly long stories so I'll keep to the shortest one. Was messing with a Ouija board, don't remember what was said, but at some point a candle in my room lit up by itself, but in the reflection on the TV it was off. So I watched it and my reflection was destroying the room, pissed off as I just sat there, until it went up to the TV yelling at it, punched the screen, removed a piece of glass and slit its throat. Nope, the hell out of the room, and when I came back the Ouija board was sitting on the TV. Tossed both of them. Actually wound up with a botched throat surgery and now I've got a slit throat. I'm not a schizo, but I have seen some pretty weird things from time to time. That being said, I'm not exactly interested nor do I believe in the paranormal, but I really couldn't explain each of the following. 1. Once when I was a kid, I saw what looked like a huge spacecraft with blinking, colorful lights slowly hovering over the apartment complex where me and my parents used to live in. I was in the car and it was night time. I was also the only that noticed it. When I told my parents about it, they didn't believe me and just told me I was imagining it. Eventually I just dropped it and decided to not talk about it anymore since nobody would have believed me anyways. It's also worth noting we live near an airport and Air Force base, and a number of UFO sightings are frequently reported in my city. 2. This one happened recently, around 2017 or 2018 if I remember correctly. I was taking care of my 1-year-old brother in the living room. He was sitting on one of those little chairs that parents use to train their babies to start eating on tables. He was sitting in the middle of our dining room table. Suddenly my mom told me to unhook the lamp from the ceiling, which was like a mini chandelier hanging up with a chain, and clean it. I did so and hooked it back up again. I was about to turn it on whilst my little brother was right underneath it, but suddenly it started swaying very ominously from side to side. I stopped and kept staring at it, almost as if I was transfixed by it. I decided to move my brother to the side of the table because it started to worry me a bit. My mom immediately came in from the kitchen to the living room saying, "Would you just turn it on already?" She flipped the switch and immediately it short-circuited. Sparks went flying everywhere and it came crashing down on the middle of the table. Had my brother been under it, I imagine it would have killed him for sure. For some odd reason my mom didn't believe me when I told her about the premonition. Little drunk, so work with me here. Be about 1 to 2 years old. Living in a medium-sized house with my mother and stepfather. Remember bits and pieces of memory from the house. Even as a child I sensed a very, very off essence from the place. Too young to express it, obviously. An 8-year-old looking child would follow me around constantly. Never in a rapid manner, would just stand in corners, watch me play, etc. Way too young to even register this thing as something scary. Just kind of assumed he was supposed to be there, too young to question otherwise. Remember a certain occasion where I was watching my mother do laundry in the basement. He stood in the adjacent corner of my mother and would just look at me, just stared. This happened all the time, but for some reason I remember this picture more vividly. Move out of that house at around 3 years old. Be me, present day. Ask my mother about that old house. Tell her pretty much everything I just listed above. She informs me that a kid died in that house from a small fire, before we moved in. Also, 4 weeks after we moved out, before anyone could buy the house, it randomly bursts into flames and burns down. It's not exactly my most terrifying experience, but it's something that still gives me shudders just thinking about it. Looking back, I like to think that kid was just following me around to witness the youth that he was robbed of. It sounds a little twisted, but he never harmed me or any of my family members, so innocently enough maybe his spirit just looked at me as a baby brother. Something to support this theory is how he got us to move out that house before it randomly burned down. Now that I'm thinking about it and typing it out, it kind of saddens me. Got a story my wife told me a bit back. We were dating at the time. She called me right after it happened, freaked out. Late at night, I think around 2 to 3 a.m. Wife, then girlfriend, still at her parents' place at this point, not a great neighborhood but not bad either. It's a 1-story house with a big window in the front to the right, door with walkway/patio area and motion light to the left. She's asleep. Someone rings the doorbell, then starts knocking. They go to the door and look through the peephole, nothing. Motion light had been turned on by movement. Eventually they ask who's out there. They hear what sounds like a youngish woman's voice, saying she needs to use their phone and to let her in. Understandably, they say no and tell her to step into the light in front of the door. They don't reply. Bushes at the front of the house rustle. My wife didn't see them, so they must have pressed up against the wall between the front window to the right and the door/walkway on the left. The knocking on the door continues for some time, mixed with harder banging. Family calls the cops, but no one's there when they arrive. Wife calls me after, freaked out and WTF. I'm still not really sure what happened. My guess was some druggie or someone looking for an easy breaking and entering target. It spooks me how they just whispered from the dark that they needed help and wanted in to use the phone, though. And that they never saw who was there, never happened again. They had break-ins in that area every once in great while too. When I was a kid I thought for sure my room was haunted. I looked at my light bulb one night and said, if you're so scary then break the light, and literally a second later the light bulb exploded. Ran out my room and refused to sleep in there for a few days. I've told this story years ago but it's been bothering me recently. 20 years old, overnight security guard. Large business building, only open at night to like 2 to 3 dudes who work nights to talk to their Chinese business partners, or cleaning staff who leaves by 11 p.m. This particular night there's only one guy, same guy I see every night, he works on 8th floor, cleaning staff is gone as it's 1 a.m. Do the rounds time. This means I take the elevator to the 45th floor and walk each hallway and inspect the fire escapes. Takes about an hour or so. I'm on the 23rd floor, my co-worker is stationed in my seat on the 1st floor, and the only other soul in the building is on the 10th floor. I make my way to the 23rd floor's bathroom. Oh, need a fancy powder room? With a couch? I sit down to check my phone for a minute. Opens phone, attempts to look at text message. Instantly gripped with intense sleep paralysis. But I'm freaking wide awake. I feel myself lose control of my body, my phone falls to the floor and shit goes real dark for me, like black. I see nothing but hear incredible screaming from every direction, getting closer rapidly. Literally trying to move hurts like when your legs get pins and needles, but my entire body. I try and stand but just fall to the floor on my knees. Scramble for my radio and baton. I do this stupid ass crawl/run out of the power room and back into the hallway. I'm like wildly looking around, like there's no way those voices came from nowhere. I took the elevator down to the 21st floor and continued my work faster than ever. I remained a skeptic. Especially since at the time I posted on 4chan and was told sleep paralysis is normal. Maybe I didn't know I was tired, suggested someone else. I myself shrugged it off. Until more shit happened. Several weeks later. Like a dream, I almost forgot about that night. I was convinced, and probably wanted to believe, that's just sleep paralysis, I guess I was tired. I'm doing my rounds again, and after weeks of ignoring the 23rd floor and swiftly getting in and out as fast as I can, I decided to walk around the offices. I'm allowed to, as long as I'm not like flashing pictures or stealing. 23rd floor folks also always tell us guards we're welcome to snacks, which is great, but of course the office I'm allowed free snacks from is the very floor that scares the shit out of me. It was just one night and I doubt this one floor is haunted. I decide to face my goddamn fears and just see what's up, maybe grab said snack. Oh shit, not too scary actually, there's someone working. Aisles and aisles of cubicles, one desk with a lamp on. I walk over, hey man, you still in here? Silence. Great. Nervously, I walk up to the desk. About 4 meters away now, just around the corner. And the lamp shuts off. As much as I don't want to, I have to fear the worst and assume this could be an intruder. I turn my flashlight on and run around the corner. Frigging nothing. My past self really wanted to not believe. I walked right into the weird pre-bathroom powder room with the couch again, maybe wanting to believe it was all in my head. Can't get sleep paralysis if I don't even frigging sit d. Vignetting like on film starts to happen to me, the corners of my vision get dark and the screaming picks up slowly. I feel my legs get weak. Absolutely the hell not. I speed walk as fast as my legs will carry me. As much as I didn't want to admit it, that floor was frigging haunted and wanted me to know and fear it. Not terrifying but weird as F. In my early 20s I used to drink a lot. One Saturday I got ready to have drinks at my friend's house. Bought a couple of bottles to share, and on my way to their place I found a guy in the street. He looked like an older man, maybe in his 30s or 40s. He asked me for help, just a spare change. Me, naturally, gave him a couple of coins. The thing is that he had a big frigging bruise in his face, and the tip on his fingers were red, completely peeled off. He was so messed up I didn't felt he could try to steal from me or anything. I got curious, and before continuing my way, I asked him what happened to him. He mentioned he was drinking since very early, it was like 10 a.m. at that moment, and he mentioned that someone pushed him to the road and that's how he got so messed up. Anyways, I was ready to continue my way, like 3 blocks from my friend's house, and the guy asked for another favor. He wanted me to purchase an alcohol bottle, the non-drinking kind, the ones for medical use. He said that the clerk in the corner store was not letting him purchase it. It came to my mind he was just a bump and he wanted something to drink, but since I didn't wanted to waste my bottles, I got him 2 little bottles of medical alcohol for less than $1. Then, it got stupid. The guy asked me if I would drink one of the little bottles with him. He called them missiles. Since everything was a challenge for me at that age, retardation, I said yes. We just walked around the block and drank that shit like a frigging shot, and hell that shit burned, and got me immediately dizzy. Not something I would try again, but it was not that bad. This is where the weird frigging shit happened. Before I left, I asked this guy's name. That's how I got raised. I shake your hand and ask your name. That's me everywhere. To my surprise, guys, just as I asked him, he replied with my name. My frigging name. Now, don't get me wrong. I live outside the States, and most of the people has 2 names and 2 last names. But what are the odds? This guy's name was same as mine. Anonis Anonzio Anonrira Anons. Like that, not even a letter changed. I was confused and amazed as hell. I just said bye and finally reached at my friend's house. We had the drinks, we chilled and everything normal. That was about 7 years ago. I turned sober around 5 years ago because I was messing with coke and meth, but I never saw this bump again, and I used to walk those streets a lot. Just wanted to share with you guys. I don't know if shit works like that, but I got the message. And all of my friends back then were fake as hell. So life turned for something better. Now I just do weed. Be me, 17. Friends have all done acid and enjoyed it. I had already tried shrooms and it was great, so I decided to try acid as well. For whatever frigging reason, I'm convinced that the acid will give me psychic powers or some shit. Plan for at least a week to get out of any obligations for a day. Decide to do it on MLB trade deadline day, and the plan is to peek while watching the trades. Plan to drop at about 1 p.m. End up having to do a bunch of annoying shit beforehand, and I only end up taking it at 4:40. And I'm really mad about that, so my headspace is all messed up. First few hours of trip are fantastic, spend time with friends, draw, cool shit. Then a bunch of nogs I don't know come to where we are and start hooting and hollering, which mess with me immediately. Me and a few others decide to go to this place called the Overlook. I decide that this is the point to awaken my latent psychic powers. Bad move. I immediately start freaking out, see evil faces in the sky, demons dancing around my feet. Suffering faces in trees. Think my friend of 14 years is a frigging demon lord. This is scary as hell because either A, my friend is dead, or B, he has been tricking me my entire life. Almost take a rock and hit him over the head, but other friend convinces me not to. I'm absolutely sure there are centipedes crawling all over me. We decide to go back, as I'm frigging starving. My friend tells me he'll buy me a burger. We get to burger joint and he refuses and tells me to go home. I'm still tripping, so the possibility of encountering my parents is frigging terrifying. Get home, go take a shower. My skin looks bruised and diseased and I can see all my veins pulsing. Nearly start crying out of sheer frigging disgust. Decide to watch The Office because LE funny show. Mom decides to walk in on me, starts having a conversation with me. Heart is racing at 1 million miles per hour because oh shit, she's gonna find out. She doesn't. She leaves and I start watching this live-action Jungle Book adaptation because my friend told me it's a good acid movie. At this point it's 1 AM and the trip is still going full tilt. I thought it was supposed to be over in 8 hours. Oh shit.jpg. Anyway, this growing feeling of dread that this is permanent coincides with Mowgli being kidnapped by hairless monkeys or something. I'm pissing myself with fear at this point because it looks real. Turn off movie, try to go to sleep. I didn't know insomnia was an effect. Start hallucinating that monkeys with 8 legs are laying eggs in my stomach through my belly button. For at least 3 hours I lay alone, silent, motionless in bed, sweating buckets, convinced I have become the host of parasitic monkey larvae. Still hungry as hell to the point where I am in sharp pain. Try to sneak downstairs to grab a bite to eat. Try to eat a banana but I physically can't do it. Try to tiptoe upstairs but my frigging dad is standing at the top of the stairs. So startled I almost collapse. He doesn't notice me and goes into the bathroom. Run into my bed. My dad starts loudly shitting for what feels like half an hour. Think he's literally shitting his organs out but can't do anything because he'll catch me awake. Keep hallucinating for another hour or so. It's about 5:30 AM at this point. After that, for the next few hours I feel the trip start to dissipate. Get out of bed at 9 AM because my grandma down the street needs help moving things. Try to look normal eating cereal but can't. It's exactly like the feeling of trying to breathe manually. I haven't mentioned it, but Hot-Blooded by Foreigner is pretty much the only auditory hallucination I had that entire night, and it played on loop for about 8 hours in my brain. Go to Grandma's. Task is to move heavy objects between spooky unfinished basement up and down 3 flights of stairs to attic that it actively being fumigated. What the hell is wrong with you, Mimi? After I finish that ordeal, she makes me have a 45-minute conversation with her about school despite the fact that it's August. Go home, try to take a nap. Unsuccessful, also I'm still noticeably tripping. It's noon the next day at this point, so I'm confused as hell and pretty scared that this is going to last forever. Parents leave for the rest of the day, beg other friend to come over to my house and listen to the stories so far. He does, but since he's never so much as had a beer, he's more confused than concerned or sympathetic. I go to a nearby restaurant with him, try to drink a milkshake, but I physically can't do it. At this point I feel super weak, can barely walk the 8 blocks back to my house. Realize I was scheduled to mow a neighbor's lawn at this point. Feel extremely guilty that I wasn't able to do such a simple task. Go home, friend leaves. Finally manage to take a nap, wake up at 7, eat a light dinner, fall back asleep and don't wake up until noon the next day. Feel woozy for the next week. Insomnia and on and off hallucinations for the next month. Permanent anxiety, trouble sleeping, fear of drugs. Eventually someone tells me the guy I bought from is notorious for frigging with first-timers and probably put 4 drops on my tab. Screw that dude. F you Alec. I'll contribute, why not? Visiting folks in Pennsylvania. In Erie, high north, and in a part that's pretty much in a woods. Older cousins, parents, aunts/uncles, and grandparents all drive into town for a fancy dinner, celebrating one of my aunt and uncles renewing their wedding vows. My younger brother and I are left to babysit our 3 younger cousins. Don't remember exactly when this was, but I do remember while I was watching cartoons with him I learned of Teen Titans Go when I thought they were airing the old Teen Titans for us to watch. Was also in late December, there was no snow but it was still really cold. Several hours pass. And suddenly out of nowhere we start hearing these huge explosions. Straight up sounds like a tank. High-grade fireworks are illegal up north due to the lower humidity. Force of the explosion slightly rumbles the house. I kick into leader mode and start gathering everyone and hurdles them into the basement as the explosions continue. My second youngest cousin, brainwashed from TV, starts biting his fingers like a cartoon because his parents are letting their iPad raise him, but that's irrelevant. Call 911. Operator can faintly hear the explosions. We straight up think that there's suddenly another war. Worry my shit about my family. Next explosion is ear-ringing, and sounds very close. Start fearing that the roof might collapse on us. Brother is trying to reach our family, but none of them are answering. Eldest cousin is throwing a fit. Middle cousin is quoting random memes. Youngest cousin somehow is the calmest out of all of us. Explosions finally calm down. But we wait nearly half an hour before we go back upstairs. Turns out what happened was some frigging idiots smuggled huge fireworks and were celebrating New Year's early, and because of their lack of experience with them, many of them flew off course due to the wind, some flying straight into the woods, one flying straight over our house, and others into neighboring acres. Nothing crazy, but I can't explain it and really freaked me out. Late at night. Home alone in fairly large house I'm renting. Nothing out of the ordinary. Suddenly there's a loud bang. It was deafening. As if the entire home had been lifted and dropped an inch. A second later every electronic on the first floor turns on. Anything with speakers is full volume, emitting harsh screeching and static. TV displaying black and then static and black again randomly. All lamps and fans high as can go. I'm terrified as this has all happened in just a few seconds. The house is filled with this horrible painful noise. Slowly struggle to turn everything off. Remotes not working for TV or cable box, eventually unplug shit from the outlet. Finally make way to desk with computer. Computer speakers are by far the loudest. The screech and static is unlike anything I've ever heard from speakers this small. This has taken me maybe 60 seconds total so far, but it felt like days. As soon as I click the volume off, the power goes out. Silence. And it didn't come back until the next day. I was panicked and in the dark with nothing but my phone. Nothing weird happened before or after that I can recall. Long stories short, my stepfather regularly freaked out and threatened to kill us all. There were a couple times that we were all down on our knees in the living room while he was waving around a rifle. He would grab the cats and a knife and take them outside, too. I can't remember any time in particular, but they were all my most terrifying experiences. I can give details if anyone wants. He told us, maybe daily, that he was an angel. He told everyone this, including the doctor when he got a physical. As an angel he could read our minds. Sometimes he would come up to us and put his hands on our heads, I was maybe 10 to 12 at the time, and fly into a rage because he thought we were thinking bad things about him. He was illiterate. He once tore a dictionary up because we were looking up a word and it made him feel insecure, my assumption. Maybe once every few months he would get extremely angry, start screaming in this awful voice. The weepy-voiced killer reminds me a lot of it. He would tell us that he was going to kill us all, and then he would run up the road to his parents' trailer and get his rifle. It would then be a lot of him screaming, about how he's seen heaven and hell, about how he's going to take us out of our misery. One time he made me kiss his feet while screaming in this weepy voice. On the nights that he flipped out, I would often try to sleep in inconspicuous places in hopes that he couldn't find me if he decided to kill us during the night, under the bed, in a special nest I made for myself. I would unlock the windows on those nights and close the bedroom door in hopes that I would hear him enter, and save my brother and myself before he could shoot us. He told us his daughter was psychic too. He said she predicted the night that this murder happened, the one in Maine. During his flip-outs he would punch huge holes in the drywall of our trailer, throw my things everywhere, threaten suicide. One time he told us he would dump a boiling fat of frying grease on my brother, 9 years old. It's weird to think back on all of this and realize I was only 10 to 13 at the time. Once when we were all arguing before going to the carnival, he decided he was going to drive us into the oil tanks at the nearby gas station. He aimed the car at them and revved the engine. Other times he would get his gun, and tell us he was going hunting humans. He would leave in his truck for a few hours. We suspected at any second that the news would report a mass murder in town. It never happened. He always came home, chilled out, like nothing ever happened. Mom pretended nothing ever happened too. I don't blame her, it was very scary. I used to work in the gas industry as a geologist. From 2007 to 2009, I was on a contract with a Russian company called North Gas, back when industrial relations with the UK were still fairly cordial. There was lots of potential gas sites in this Siberian region far up north, and I used to go around potential sites with company borehole engineers, usually in groups of 2 to 3. Anyway, I was at one site in northern Siberia with a German engineer in late October of 2008. took ages to get to and completely devoid of human habitation, but really beautiful taiga. Endless forests on the drive up there. Anyway, the site we went to survey was fairly typical of what you expect in the industry at these sorts of locations: thin topsoil giving way to permeable siltstone, excellent locations for surveying. Now to the story. We came to a location where satellite imagery was suggesting that permafrost was retreating. It still frigging snows and ices over, of course, but the key point is that it's not entirely frozen over. You can install stuff during the summer months, get gas production up. It was a pretty boring landscape though, very thin topsoil giving way rapidly to permeable siltstone. Lots of these natural holes all over the place too, permafrost plugs that had melted and left 20 to 30 m deep holes dotted all over the place. We decided to stay a few weeks and do some test surveys. First week was completely fine, got some good locations, things progressing smoothly. By the end of that week though, things were getting a little weird. Every time I would go out with the spectrometer after that first week, I'd occasionally hear some noises from the holes. I was never near them, because while you get a lot of gas coming off these things, they're not terribly good for industrial drilling. It was faint, just on the border of hearing. I never knew how to describe those noises until a few years later when someone took me out to a jazz bar and some guy was playing a violin-like instrument that made this drone noise, like a fa-am. Disconcerting, makes your hair stand up. My colleague would notice this too. Disconcerting, as in this job, you're not really working together, but apart. So two of us were hearing stuff out there. We were both rational people, at the time for me, at least, so we put it down to cave noises. Laugh, forget it. About 10 days into this survey, it started happening at night. Again, faint, but really ominous. That drone noise. We used to sleep in the back of the van we had brought, but even through those doors we heard it. Again, stop being stupid, it's cave noises, laugh, have a few beers, go to sleep. It got worse from there. The day after, I found some slime stuff around one of the permafrost boreholes. Yet, you get lichens and mosses around these things, not an issue, but this was like petroleum jelly, that really viscous stuff. I touched it and immediately regretted it, it felt a lot like pork belly fat. It was warm too, which was really disturbing, considering it was -5°C, for you merry fags, during the day out there. Bring round the German engineer to take a look, he looks troubled. For the rest of the day I was constantly on edge too. I kept looking back at the borehole too, just to check. I kept saying to myself. Things got worse at night. That drone noise got a lot worse, but it felt, and I know that's a shit way of putting it, like it wasn't from below, but above, on the surface. My German engineer tried to laugh it off, but I could tell he was seriously disturbed by it. Just that low fume. Eventually we get to sleep. God knows how many hours later though, we wake up together because there is definitely something attempting to open the door handle to the passenger seat of the van. Click click click. And now that drone is right frigging outside, and it sounds a lot like gurgling. At this point we both freak the hell out and scream like a pair of little girls. It stops. We don't sleep of the rest of the night, and it doesn't come back. Next day, as soon as we make it 9 a.m., we cautiously open the doors. The entire back door is covered in this pork fat shit. The place reeks of something rotten too. Passenger door just smeared in that stuff. But the thing that made us immediately go screw it, we're leaving, was the passenger window, which was also smeared in this gunk, had an outline on it, like something had pressed its skull into the fat stuff and left an outline. It was unmistakable, some elongated human skull, with no eye orbitals. Yet, I'm not a car nut, but it was some modified Jeep that the engineer guy would just not shut the hell up about all the way from Novosibirsk. Jelly stuff was all over the area around us too, and of course, lead all the way to that borehole. We got out of there very fast after that, but as we were packing, that drone shit started again from that hole, and it was loud. It was guttural by this point. Whatever the shit was making, it was down there and close too. German guy went pretty nuts after that. Just hopped in, immediately started going. Equipment that was still out for methane measurements just left. Didn't stop driving for the next 14 hours. I pretty much ditched my job soon after. I had no desire to be left like that again in the middle of places like that. German guy, never heard from again. He never talked about it to me anyway. Thanks, I suppose. I guess distance from that event makes it sound pretty prosaic. Spooky noises, ow woo oo, slime, oh ooh ooh. During that night though, I was convinced I was going to die. You know how you can just know when someone or something like an animal is nice, curious, or is just out to mess you up? I knew instinctively that whatever wanted and didn't want to crack open a beer and ask us about geology, if you get my drift. Anyway, I spent a long time after I had calmed down about it, which took a few months, in fact, to think of a rational reason for this. Every time though, I kept butting up against the inexplainable. Sure, drone could be cave noises, but the warm slime stuff? The guttural noise? Around 2012 I got a lot into reading about frozen mammoths and the worry about viruses from the taiga that they were expecting because of climate change, and at that point I went full/X/ and said screw it. Frozen monster. Be a junior in high school. Hanging out with friend on his front deck. He has a screen door hooked up to an alarm system. Beeps whenever it opens or closes. We're looking at the laptop. Hear the screen door go beep beep beep. Look at each other. Hear it go beep 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 again, like somebody had just opened and closed the door. We're right there, nothing has moved at all. Weird, whatever. 5 minutes later I head in to get some water or something. The TV that was previously off, turns on and goes to static. Nope at each other. All right man, I'll catch you later at school. Not that scary, could be explained by sheer coincidence, but that freaked me the hell out and was the closest I've been to high strangeness and the physical world being manipulated, if it was supernatural, which is probably not even the case. I moved into a new house a few years ago, don't live there anymore, only lived there for a year. The first night I had this dream, where I was lying in bed and I couldn't move or speak, but I heard movement in the house. This goes on every night for weeks on end. I start getting this pain in my jaw, it becomes more and more intense, every time I sleep. After a few months, the dream changes slightly. At first there is a man looking through the crack in the door at me, then as time goes on more, he eventually enters the room and stands at the bottom of my bed. Eventually, after living there for nearly 9 months, he has climbed onto the bed. The pain in my jaw still getting more and more intense. The man had no real facial features, he was blank and dressed in black, with pure white skin. Every dream didn't have movement, but it was like everyone I went to sleep. The man got that little bit close to my face the last few weeks of living there, he was about to grab my face. I slept over my parents' house for a few days, then went back, and he had retreated to the foot of my bed, but he was quicker this time. He managed to move in a dream. All other previous dreams it was like staring at a still photograph, and you wouldn't notice the difference from one to the next. I moved out, so did my friend shortly after, haven't had the dream since. 12 a.m. Hear loud bang on my window like someone tried to break in. Immediately grab my gun and walk outside. Nobody was there. 2 nights later, don't remember the time, most likely 2 am-ish. Hear what sounds like a very light tapping on my window. Punch my window like a retard. Hear rustling in the bushes outside my window. Sleep. I'm too retarded to care if it was a home invasion, I just wanted to sleep. It was the autumn of 2005, and while driving home from work, I stopped in at a thrift store that was en route to my home. While waiting in line to pay for my goods, I couldn't help but notice that the boy being held in the arms of what I should presume was his mother, seemed rather large for being carried around in such a fashion. Well, he then slowly craned his neck around to look at me, and what I saw shall haunt me for the rest of my days. He had the appearance of an 8 or 9-year-old child, and yet his eyes presented as though they'd seen centuries come and go. A wry smile crept across his face, and he said, in a distinctly childlike voice, "I never forget a face." He then turned his head in toward his mom's shoulder as she was collecting her bags and leaving. As I approached the till, he looked at me once more, smiled mischievously, and wagged his finger at me as they exited the building. On Halloween, while high on shrooms, I tried to summon a demon with a Ouija board. We had a strobe light going in the background and both of us thought we saw something creeping around in the flashes. The friend I was with got freaked out and started doing some kind of sigils or something in the corners of the room. I woke up around 3 a.m. and felt a presence near me. There was a dark silhouette of a body standing next to me and I thought it was my friend. I told him to stop playing around but he didn't move or respond. Just stood there. Closing my eyes I kind of swatted him, but to my shock my hand just encountered really cold air. I shot up and frantically turned the light on and when I did there was nothing there. My friend had apparently left the apartment hours ago. I didn't go back to sleep again that night. A couple of months later I caught him in a store and asked him why he left. He said I had started acting strange and passed out and the whole apartment kept giving off creepy vibes after I went to sleep. Ages ago on a family trip, parents, aunt, uncle, cousin, and we piled in a van and were going to New York from Ohio. We left late and 3/4 through Pennsylvania. The adults decide to stop and find a hotel. We cannot find any rooms as some mine collapse just happened and news media is in every fucking room. After a few hours of driving, it's like 2 a.m., and my dad decides to drive further off the beaten path to continue the search. We end up in bumblefugue nowhere on a 2-lane country road with thick trees on either side. My cousin and I are sleepy and kinda scared because it looks creepy as heck. The adults say it's all okay and we will find something soon. I hear my aunt say what's that, so I look up. In the middle of this creepy road is a large shape just standing still. Its back is toward us, but I just remember a big dark shape. My dad says it's probably just a hillbilly out moonshining or something. The figure turns left and moves into the tree line. Not 10 minutes later we find a Motel 8 with 2 rooms. Odd shit alert. In the lobby another family is checking in as well. I look at the kid in the family and it's a kid I went to elementary school with who I hadn't seen in like 5 years. The next day we drive out and back on the way to New York. Later I remember it and ask my dad about it. He tells me that he was putting on a brave face that night, but the thing in the road was covered in hair and had a gorilla face. Still spooky remembering it. I was 7 or 8 playing with toy cars on the floor of the living room. Look up to the open door that leads into the hall, which in turn leads into the kitchen where my mum is making dinner. See a dark figure. My initial thought was that it was a ninja. Walk past the open door down the hallway towards the kitchen. Scared I sit waiting for my mother to react to it. She never does. Call to her and ask her if she's alone. She responds with yet a little confused. Get up and go to the kitchen. Just my mum peeling spuds. Had some strange things happen in the house, mainly involving my mother and sister. Sister goes to turn the TV channel on the TV. It was a push button, one of those big old massive heavy TVs. It flips over forward onto the glass. My sister just screams, freaked out. Mother was getting divorced. One point she gets pissed off that she took her wedding photo down. Decides to put it back up because screw my dad, it was her wedding day. Just as she is about to place it back on the nail, she drops the hook. She places the photo down and goes to pick up the photo. Power goes out in the whole house. Burglar alarm is going off its winders, so it's dark as hell. One of those old fuse boxes with the wires, so we are there with candles fixing the fuse. Get lights back on. The hook is gone. Can't find it anywhere. The photo never got put back up. Late summer evening after sunset, on shrooms. Walking along Lakeshore Drive alone after parting ways with my chums. Marveling at the constellations in the night sky, particularly the winter triangle. Hear what sounds like radio static emanating from an outcropping of shrubbery of a residential property across from the lake. Approaching it, also notice a reddish glow near the ground. Closer inspection reveals it to be some sort of triangular-shaped two-way radio. I pick it up and holding it makes my whole body tingle. Pleased to make your acquaintance, number 9, said a voice with a thick German accent. I instinctively push one of 2 buttons on the device and acknowledge that I've received the transmission. Splendid. We would like you to continue heading southbound, number 9, and toward the municipal works compound. I proceed as directed, and resume my stargazing. Every constellation now appears to be connected with chalky ribbons, and a neon red 9 is flashing in the southern sky. All of these unusual phenomena seemed perfectly acceptable to me in my altered state. A tiny RC car went whizzing past me and had a 9 decal on its door. More unusual visual presentations in the southern sky, as though it's an inverse overhead projector with someone rapidly writing mathematical equations and geometric figures. The radio voice returns. Look inside the rubbish bin that you are about to pass. Resting atop the trash is a cardboard container, like a burger-sized takeout food carton, with the word 9 written on the lid. When I was around 6 I had a dream. Stay with me guys, this isn't the normal stupid dream story, that wasn't scary or full of dread or anything like that. I was walking down a long hallway, deep red carpet, dark wood walls. I couldn't see the ceiling, just blackness. It wasn't oppressive though, it felt like being in a museum or something. Anyway, there were doors on each side stretching off forever it seemed. I opened one and standing behind it was this girl from my class. I tried another, my best friend standing there. I skipped some, opened one and didn't know the kid. I kept opening doors at random. The people were getting older but I didn't know any of them. This went on until everyone was probably in their 40s before I woke up. Didn't think much of it. A few weeks later I met the kid I didn't recognize. Same clothes and everything. We didn't become friends or anything but I remembered the dream. And that kept happening. People behind the doors were people I'd meet and at least casually get to know. The last one I recalled with any real clarity was my first girlfriend back in high school. But as far as I know I'm still meeting people that were behind those doors. Once I figured it out it scared me because it seems so mundane, but that's pretty powerful viewing of the future. If I had slept longer I'd know how long I'll live. I went to the abandoned Los Angeles Zoo that nobody knows exists at night one time. I knew they did satanic rituals there. Richard Ramirez would sleep there during his murder spree. Corpses pulled out of there almost every week. A lot of dumped bodies. A lot of other bad dark history that won't fit in this post. The rumor is they do rituals there because of the latent dark energy in the ground, like some forgotten Civil War or WW2 battlefield. I walked down a dirt path through the woods, Griffith Park, to get there. I kept getting a bad feeling that would ramp up as I got closer even though I've seen a lot, had loaded guns pointed in my face, not scared of my shadow or anything. Had 4 or 5 big strong guys with me and I'm pretty big and strong myself. That bad feeling though wouldn't go away and it was hard to ignore. Like when you go hunting and you get a feeling of being watched. Turn around and see a cougar or something stalking you way far off. How did you know it was there? Something primal. Don't know. I got to this one area that was within this zoo compound and got a feeling I've never had before or since. It's like the same panic as when you're drowning. Every nerve in your body screams if you don't run right now, you will die. The feeling was so strong that it's impossible to describe. It's like walking into an ambush in war and suddenly realizing that you did. I left and just put it out of my mind for a while. Saw a news story about a month later. A jogger found a human skull, victim unknown, set down exactly where I had been standing and facing the exact opposite direction I had been facing. That is probably up there for me. One of the few times I've gotten that real strong primal fear and adrenaline aside from actually being in life or death combat with someone. To get home, I have to walk this small road right next to a forest. I regularly see or hear deers and other animals at night. I don't know what you guys call juvenile deers in US, but anyways, there was this deer mom and its kid that I saw every night, and they were really quite friendly and not scared of humans, to my astonishment. I went back there every night, because I really like these animals, and I would lay out some food for them. There's this nice rock to sit on, and I would watch them from afar. Well, after a few weeks they stopped coming, and I was walking home and heard movement in the forest next to me. Then again, but from another location a few meters away. Naturally, I thought, nice, the deers are back, so I just stood there and listened. Out of nowhere, I got this incredibly anxious feeling and heard more noises, which clearly were not deer. I moved back slowly, away from forest. Then all of the sudden, and I can't explain this, extreme fear and panic, like nothing I've ever felt, and I ran towards home, locked the door. It's hard to explain why I felt so distressed, but I'm sure to this day that had I remained there, something evil would have happened. It was this instinctual feeling. The 2 deer never came back, by the way. I don't know if that's related though. Wife died recently. Can't bear to see her grave, but want to pay my respects. Go to the cemetery, but can't get past the gate. Stand and sob at the gates because it's still so fresh a wound. Start going at night so no one sees a grown man weeping outside a cemetery he can't bring himself to enter. Fat, slovenly dude waddles down the road at like 2 in the frigging morning while I'm trying to work up the courage to go in. He stares at me as he waddles past. Run home ashamed, we'll try again tomorrow. B8-ish. 2 friends and I laying on the grass watching clouds. Hang out for what seems like an hour or 2 until it's dark. As we get up to go home, realize it's late. Knock on my front door and Mom is crying. We were gone like 10 hours. Police came and searched. Entire neighborhood was checked and people went around yelling our names. We were right next to my house the whole time. Scared the hell out of me. I have no idea what happened. Still think about it sometimes.